Welcome back to Inside Sources. As we continue the conversation on the future of Nigeria today, I have another young, eminent Nigerian with whom I will also engage on the conversation on the future of our country. His name is Mr. Onigbinde. He is the co-founder and director of Budget. Sheung, you're welcome to Inside Sources.
It's a pleasure being here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Right. So, if you look at where the country is today, and I hope your response will also reflect some of the dynamics of the narrative among the younger generation of our emerging leaders. Is Nigeria going in a direction that will deliver that greatness that we all believe is the destiny of our country?
Oh, that's a great way to start. Let me say that we are not taking the difficult decisions, but we are making some important decisions. If you look at us, this is a great country that God blessed with a fortune, and that fortune is oil and gas in copious amounts, largest reserves in the continent. What have we done with that oil and gas over the years? We did not manage it well. It's as if you inherit a building from your dad and you choose not to paint it, not to manage it. You just showed up every single year and you took rent. And over the years, that created a culture. It created a rentier culture. Everybody is in government and is thinking I have just 2 years, 4 years, I might even have 3 days because I could be fired at any point in time. So you are trying to take as much as possible from the system. So there is it creates this rentier, this extractive mechanism. And I think that's what we have created over the time. That even the oil and gas that we have, when you had countries like UAE, Qatar, Saudis, they were ramping up production. It's in our face. Now, US went from around 7 million barrels and went all the way to 13 million barrels recently with shale production and all of that. We did not invest. We did not do enough to want to manage what has been bestowed upon us.
We're actually struggling with 1.6, 1.4.
1.3 million barrels. By the time you adjust that for condensates, we're practically doing around 1 million barrels. And also because over the years, we felt that was going to be enough. But as population expanded, as appetite for foreign goods expanded, it was clear to us that oil was no longer enough. So it's something that's now created a cascade of challenges for us down the line. Economic, fiscal, macroeconomic. And the question we're going to ask ourselves is there are 2 issues that have happened recently. The removal of the fuel subsidy. Because that's what, and also the exchange rate parity. The removal of fuel subsidy had to happen because at the point it was clear that we could no longer afford it. We've used federation receipts. We've used excess crude accounts. We draw down almost $11 billion, according to a report by Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. Then we took also Euro bonds. That was even then, between 2011 and 2014. Then we took Euro bonds. Then we used LNG dividends. At the point, so what exactly is else? What's untouchable anymore? We could no longer just do it. And not because the volume also was contestable, because you cannot say, look at the numbers have sharply dropped now. So there were a lot of fictitious and fraudulent things happening in that circle. But all of that is being done. But I say those are short-term measures. Either you remove fuel subsidy, or either you even find the exchange rate parity. For us to know if we are in the power of greatness stands for me a few things. One, productivity. How do we get Nigeria to be productive? If we don't, part of productivity is your production.
Right.
How does your production eat 1.8 million per barrel per day? How do you get in the next 5-10 years, you're already on 2.53 million barrels per day? Because we also know that the age of oil is coming to an end, maybe in the next few decades. So how do you do about non-oil production? You have countries like Brazil, where they export agricultural products of around $140 billion per year. That's almost twice our value of oil exports as a country. So how are you going to sit down and reflect that? How do you expand non-oil production too? Those are the things that will first set us apart, because that will set us, put people to jobs and give us some level of macroeconomic stability that we choose, that we seek. So all of these things that we are doing right now is to open that space, but it will not be enough. And on top of that is talent. Why the talent that's going to do all of this work? So when we say we are in the path of greatness, I want to see a few things. I want to see our rule of law. I want to see our investment in education. I want to see our investment in health. And I want to see how we are also investing our trade and investment approach. How we're also positioning to be able to attract capital. So those are the things that we say we are on the right track, because we can do this offering for nothing. Which means oil prices can go up, fuel prices can go up, exchange rate can get devalued.
And then we don't get any sustained
results from it.
Growth from it.
At all at the end of the day, if we don't choose to do the things that make country great.
So in your own view, you've mentioned quite a few things. In terms of the economic policies, what else do you think ought to happen? Or that you would describe as a significant, step that ought to be taken?
The first thing I always say is that Nigeria is like someone that is dieting and is mounting the scale every 30 minutes. You're trying to see if you are losing weight in every. It's not. That doesn't work that way. You are too short-termist. And that I think was by the Google co-founder to say, for things to happen, it happens in a long-term span. There's this huge rush, and I think it comes from this electoral cycle approach, where we want to get everything done in 4 years, in 2 years, in 3 years. And we are choosing the least available option. We're apply the least resistance to things. So there's no coordinated thinking for a prolonged period. To say in the next 5-10 years, what would maternal mortality look like? What would malnutrition look like? What would numeracy level look like? What would literacy skills look like? What would non-oil export look like in 10 years? What are we doing now that would put non-oil receipt at tenfold? What are we doing now that will take oil production from whatever capacity we have right now to 2.5 million? Let me go back a bit. When we had oil prices between 2011 and 2014 at $112 per barrel, and that was for a sustained period for 44 months when we're doing the calculation of the budget. We had a petroleum industry bill that was languishing, that should have provided a guiding framework of investment and a direction in terms of incentives and all of that. But we chose not to do it. And we left all of the money on the table. We even had the royalty clause that was written in 1993 that we could have amended to get a couple of more funds. We did not do that. So in some sort of, just because we didn't really think ahead, it looks like oil money was gushing at that point. It just seemed that it was enough. So for us to be able to do anything proper, we will have to think long term. And there are going to be institutions that are going to be set in terms of a long-term, to drive long-term delivery. So even if you make Olusegun the president tomorrow, he's only fulfilling a component of that long-term vision. If America says, we're sending somebody to the moon, if you kill the president, the man will still get to the moon. So it's important that we set long-term vision, because I see us keep firefighting every single time. It's not going to work. The second thing for me is as states. If we keep looking at the federal government as where our salvation is, I don't think we will find it. And because a lot of times when you see federal government intervening for states, it's always when they're in crisis mode. They can't pay salaries. They can't maintain their overheads. So we're only supporting states on consumption mechanisms. As federal government look back and say, we'll build a solid agricultural value chain, maybe for flowers, for horticulture. Plateau State has a great climate to be able to deliver that. Same thing that Kenya has done in the last few years. They've raised $1 billion economy from exporting flowers. We could sit down and reflect and say, we want to build a solid horticultural value chain from Plateau State. Where is the leadership in Plateau State to make that happen? Not when states can't pay salaries, and that's when we now know we need to build up states. States must be built out for production also. So by the time we also have the quality of leadership at the state level to be able to drive reform, but that's when you know that, yes, we are true. And finally, human capital development. Without the people to be able to drive all of this investment in education, which is one of the reasons why we don't do it, because it won't show up in 2-3 years. A lot of crises we're facing Northwest and Northeast, there are fallouts of underinvestment in previous decades. So if we don't start doing it now, it will still continue to balloon.
Interesting. So if we look at the impact of some of the tough economic reforms, that he also agreed are important, like removal of subsidy, the regularization of the forex, so that they remove the arbitrage and all of that. It's been quite a very difficult one for a lot of our people. It's a lot of hardship in the land. Now, there are two schools of thought that say, oh, well, look, Nigerians have actually been wasteful. Maybe now we are getting trimmed properly. And there are those that say that, look, I mean, it's the people that you are giving the tough end, the hard end of the stick. What's your own perception on this?
I mean, it's not a fair school of thought to put that burden on Nigerians, that they are the ones that will be well fed. So we even call it the fake lifestyle, and that this is the real lifestyle. That we lived, with cheap dollar. I mean, 2010 was the first time I left this country, and a Kenyan shilling to a dollar was 160, was 80 Kenyan shillings to a dollar.
8 shillings.
80 Kenyan shillings. 80.
In 2010.
In 2010. Naira was 160 naira to a dollar. So it was 2 naira to 1 Kenyan shilling. Now, today, 14 years after, Kenyan shilling is around 130 Kenyan shillings to a dollar. We moved from 80 to 130. We moved from 1,660 to 1,700. So look at, so did we suddenly become unproductive to that level? The problem is we have not been able to get the quality leadership to articulate thinking on how we can build a productive country. And then you can't blame, Nigerians will say, oh, you chose these leaders. Yeah. But you have an opportunity of using state power and state policy and political will to really advance progress, but you chose not to do it. And this decline, we started not just Buhari, it started even prior to Buhari, where we had a boom and we could not articulate a vision of how do we expand now and manage it forward. And so that correction is now starting to happen. We're having a more youthful population that has an expanding appetite. We lack fiscal discipline. So a whole lot of money in government that is used as bribery, and a lot of unproductive money is chasing the dollar, Then we went on a printing spree for projects that were not targeted. And at the end of the day, those funds still chase the dollar.
Let's come to more in the fiscal, area. I wanted us to also talk about budget. I mean, you run a very impressive outfit budget, and I think you started in 2011, and good job, by the way, Shield. Now, but I wanted us to discuss around that. From your own experience, since you formed budget, what do you consider to be the major challenges around budgeting in our country?
Yeah, there are plenty of challenges, but the first problem is that our budget is written like a list of projects to be procured. It's like a contract vending machine. It's not tied to any purpose. It's not tied to any plan. We have a national development plan, but nobody looks at that plan to say, okay, education, this is our plan, this is our target. Now, let's start cascading that and showing in the budget how we're going to meet those national development plans. There was what they call the MTSS, the medium-term sector strategy. There will be different agencies who develop 3 to 4 year plan. We stopped all of those processes. So now it's like at the discretion of the minister, of the civil servants, and for those who have 1 or 2 or 3 interests to insert items in the budget. And then by the time it goes to the National Assembly, it's an entire collapse. So the first problem I feel, and that's why you see we're borrowing a lot. We took almost $15 billion from Eurobonds. We took a whole lot from the World Bank, almost $10 billion from the World Bank in the last 10 years. We've taken a whole lot of funds, debt. All of that has not translated into progress as it should have. Just because our spending is not targeted towards some kind of goal. The goal to see what exactly is public resource supposed to change. And that's until that's why when I look at South Africa's budget, I enjoy reading, because you will see that this is our agenda, this is our goal, and this is how we finance it, and this is what we are financing. But you open a Ministry of Education budget, you can't tie the items together. And by the time you now have insertions from the National Assembly there, you can't even make sense of the budget. You will see an atomic agency distributing maternal kits. You will see them trying to do human rights sensitization. So you don't really see, there's no plan in the budget. And that's where everything goes wrong, because the budget is an instrument of planning. When you talk about public policy planning, it starts from the budget. So for me, major problem. The second thing we have not been able to solve from the budget is the fact that there are too many interests that insert their own personal interest in the budget. So it's become like a provision kind of document, like you mentioned. So you find everybody wants a college of education. Look at National Assembly. Almost 80% of bills in National Assembly are establishment bills.
Establishing something.
Different agencies, different organizations. Now, it's gone so brazen. I mean, I went to Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, and towards the end of the Buhari regime, another university was approved for medical sciences in Abeokuta again. So not even any other place. So it could have just been, you remodel this university as a University of Abeokuta and put a medical school inside it, and that would have just been fine. Why create a whole university inside the
same town?
In the same town.
Being federal.
What's the whole purpose of that? I mean, we're short of medical institutions. I mean, maybe medical doctors, but it's that the answer to it. So that, for me, it's the challenge. It looks like everyone has now created a simulation. How do I show that I'm useful to my people? And that's gone as far as even service chiefs. I'm not kidding. To say I'm a service chief, I must put something in my community. It's gone as far as a House of Rep member, a senator. And it's not making budget so bloated, so uncoordinated. It's like you have a loaf of bread and you have a tiny butter and you're trying to spread a very small piece of butter. So you now have...
Even service chiefs, as in
service chief wants to put a college in his community, and you can mention names either in Biu, either in one, but even in Osun State there. So there is a challenge there. And so you have this uncoordinated spending, where you now find out that if the government now releases 60% of the funds, a fund that's supposed to go into servicing maybe 28 projects, that fund now goes servicing 80 projects. So you now get 5% releases in 80 projects. Instead of you to have gotten maybe 40 or 50% releases in 20 projects. So you now get a project, it's running for 5 years, it's running for 10 years, then you end up having over 4,000 projects in the Ministry of Works announcing abandoned, nationally around 10,000 projects. And so those projects don't get to happen. So those are the kind of, because we are not targeted. We are not focused. So in another 5 years, the guy comes back and say, the prices of commodities have changed. I need a variation. So project you should have fixed with 100 billion naira. If variation happens and it's asking for 400 billion naira, then you go on and on and on like that. We are not, and that's why it's shameful that we have not understood the primacy of the budget as a tool for national development. We just happen and say, okay, the president has presented the budget. How do I put my own thing? There should be some coordinated thinking to say, this is how we plan the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Interesting. I mean, I also wanted you to get your take on, some of what, in my view, might explain part of this scenario. So what's the role, or what ought to be the role? You have, focused on that area for decades now. The budget, who has what kind of responsibility? The executive presents the budget. The legislature has the power to appropriate. But these days, you see that a lot of the people in the National Assembly, they are also determining specific projects that ought to happen. What is supposed to be, in your view, the balance of powers regarding, responsibility of the budget between the executive and the legislative arm of government?
And it's a very great question, because this is not a problem that Nigeria faces alone. I was reading an article in The Economist just 2 weeks ago about how Brazil is also battling this. And the executive is screaming that the legislature have hijacked the budget. And they are writing what you would call pork and barrel items on a targeted manner into the budget. Unfortunately, that's the same scenario in Nigeria. We run a presidential system. And so that makes it even much more challenging. In my own view, read the Constitution for what it is, and also following due process.
Right.
The budget is an appropriation act, so it's a legislation. And so if you follow normal rules making, bill making, law making practice,
right?
If you present a law to the National Assembly, they have right to adjust, to modify, to review whatever it is. And so I still believe, until the Supreme Court says otherwise, maybe, I mean, Speakers might say the intention was this, but the practice has deviated, so we make this kind of pronouncement. But I still believe that the National Assembly has the right to adjust the budget.
To the extent that it distorts the program of the executive.
Yeah, because you have to agree that you're making a law in the process. Now, this is with great power comes great responsibility. Even though you have a right to do that, in my own view, you should also be responsible about what exactly is the development trajectory of the country. And so in a scenario where you have the two houses are led by the president, they come from the same political party. And it's also because of lack of coordination.
They're supposed to be committed to the same agenda.
Yes.
But that is not happening anymore. You have a situation where, you know, and it's interesting, your take on it, because, and it's true that, you know, you got to think about it in a very hard way. But my experience has been that the executive branch of government seems to be the one that is more organized around what has to be done.
Exactly.
They have the bureaucracy. Yeah. You know, as a matter of fact, there's supposed to be a national development plan, you know, that has been negotiated around the country that everybody is trying to fit into. So if you had that, and then you now present a plan, somebody comes from the National Assembly and say, no, put this there, just like you said, you know, we have a lot of crane. I think one of the stuff I was thinking, you know, is buying, you know, is it borehole? You know, you have an agency that has nothing to do with supplying reproductive
health kits,
you know. So I think that it is the fact that the people in the National Assembly have, quote unquote, and I use this responsibility, abused powers, the process that has led us to a situation where the budget becomes consistently distorted.
And I think the executive has not pushed back. Let's not forget that in the previous years, prior to Buhari's government, the budget was always delayed. Sometimes it went as far as May, June. Just because of this constant pushback. But recently, we went to this spree of we want the budget to be signed on the first day of January. And so because of that, we've discounted. I don't think it's a good thing. If you wait an extra 1 month, and you get it right, what's the worst that can happen? Let the executive see, and I think the budget should not just be the show that we get where the president presents the budget. There should be some form of intergovernmental meeting ahead of the budget. The president sits, the Senate president sits, the House of Reps sits, the appropriation committee sits. I'm interested, they're all APC members. What is the vision of our party? Those were the things we got in the regional times when we had the parliamentary system. Either Chief Awolowo was the premier or not. Obafemi Awolowo was still built in 1962 when he was no longer premier, because those things were set in the agenda of the party. So those are the kind of things that we should get, where there's a common vision to say, how do we even want to deliver services for the people? And they will now use their powers in the National Assembly
to support
that vision.
That common vision. And I think part of the problem is, you know, what happened in the military, time of the military, and then corruption. Otherwise, you know, because if you look at our parties, you know, there are no ideological differences of any kind. You know, so APC wins, everybody moves to APC, PDP wins,
everybody's even thinking like them.
Anyway, one last question because of our time that I also wanted to get your take on regarding budget. So the envelope system or the zero budgeting system, do you think, you know, one is better than the other, and which one do you think is best for our developmental aspiration?
Two things I want to say. One is, based on the previous question, I think there should be a tweak in it. So some countries that they've said you can tamper with the current side of the budget, but the capital project should not be tampered. So they put an extra legislation on it. And I think we're due for that. Or even say constituency budget, let's put a cap. You want to put something in the budget, but 5% cap of the capex is what you're allowed to adjust. So that we know that at least there's a 95% that is within the control of the executive that is setting the vision. And I think that also comes back into either we do zero-based or envelope. I don't like zero-based budgeting because I believe that it's cumbersome.
Tried it, but it was thoroughly frustrating.
It's cumbersome, especially for a government that has to think on a long term. Because that means every single time we have to keep putting the budget on zero basis and say we keep justifying. If you want to build a road, it might take 4 or 5 years. The envelope-based budgeting that we do is fine, as long as we're able to tie it to some form of planning. To say, we look at education, and this is how much we need to invest in education in the next 10 years. And this is how much it is going to be for right now. America has some targets till 2030 already. So irrespective of if Biden is president or Trump is president,
they're going to do.
Those obligations will be fulfilled. And that's why even the US, that we took this presidential system for, they have what they call mandated spending, that even the Congress cannot tamper with it. So then there are now some adjustables that you can now put a few items to. So those are the kind of things we have copied the system, but we have not thoroughly learned from it. And we are just constantly abusing it for personal purposes.
Okay. Before I let you go, what's your view about the performance of the Bola Tinubu presidency?
Honestly speaking, I don't think they've started well. I think we are seeing a dearth of technocratic leadership. There's so much things. There's an overextension for political opportunism. That's my problem with the government. And that's why a lot of decisions were taken, and they were not taken with sound technocratic support. Remove first subsidy from day one. I think that was a bad decision. The exchange rate parity without you being a significant buffer so that you can, no matter how much you like this open-ended system, what we call a currency must have some degree of stability. It's not going to be 1.6 today and 1.7 tomorrow. You don't see that anywhere in the world where currency just fluctuates randomly like we are having it right now. So I feel that he has to go back and reflect. Do I want to govern or do I want to do politics? Because even look at his cabinets, there's still a lot of dead weights in the cabinet.
Even after the reshuffle. What do you think about the reshuffle?
It's welcome, but you added 7 ministers, you removed 5. First problem.
No, well, you know that Beta Edu was suspended and
I think Lalong left. So 7-7. So personally, if you are putting that in the way aggregate, I felt like he was already reducing them by this one. But to be honest with you, I felt like there were too many. There's still at least 5 to 6 people that you can look at. And I think the people that were taken off, right. Those were right decisions. Some of them we've looked at them from our farm and say, you're not doing right. But I think there's still more people in the system that it needs to take out. And really, the days where we had an Okonjo, an Obi, an El Rufai, Soludo, we need to
have that kind of
technocratic thinking, technocratic core.
And you expect that, I mean, sorry to cut you. I mean, this is the kind of thing that a lot of people expected from this president based on what he did in Lagos. That we have a technocratic-driven cabinet.
But no time's up, because Nigeria is a large place with so many competing interests. And I think the politician in him has grown from 1999 till now.
Well, as somebody said, to become the president of Nigeria, you have to compromise a lot. Thank you so much, Shehu, for coming to Inside Sources.
It's a pleasure.
And thank you for your contributions here and your contribution to national development.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the work that Budget has been doing and continues to do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.